Margaret Fulton is probably one of the most recognised names in Australia, not just for food, but for just being an amazing advocate for the way we live and embracing our food culture. Could you just put your hand up if... Yeah, that's right. Put your hand up if you know how to clap. God, how did we make you walk up a flight of stairs? Give her another round of... Margaret, sit wherever you're most comfortable. I think you need to be in the star seat over here, Dale. That's right. Keep walking. You're not getting out of it that easy now. Next to Margaret, we have second generation Fulton, Suzanne Gibbs, Margaret's daughter. Hello. And showing that the gene line runs strong and true right down to granddaughter Louise Fulton Keats. Now, these three women know food, they know Australia, they know cooking. Margaret, how many cookbooks have you written?
Oh, 20 or so.
Oh, just 20 or so. So, you know, not a huge number. Are you happy to hold that, or? Yeah?
I'm very happy to hold this.
Uh-oh, I might regret that. Here you go, ladies. And Suzanne and Louise have also written cookbooks that we're going to get to a bit later. And delightfully, Margaret's unfortunately all out of print because she's such a bestseller. Does anyone have a Margaret Fulton cookbook at home? Yeah, not too surprising.
3 shares.
All sold out and out of print now, but Suzanne and Louise have both got books here today, and we're going to be giving some of those away, so make sure you pay attention. Now, Margaret, I was talking before about my mum growing up in the Depression, and even though you look about 20 years younger than she is, I'm sure, did the Depression and growing up when times were a bit tougher have an impact on you and how you see food?
Oh, it had a big effect on my family. My father was a very fine tailor, and all of the country folk wanted Dad to make their clothes, but they couldn't pay him. So in would come a sheep, a shorn sheep, fortunately, and
did he have to knit a suit
or a
out
case of apples or a case of oranges. Farmers paid with what they had. So it didn't help pay the electric bills, but it did keep us living, and there were 6 children.
Yeah.
So Dad just carried on sewing for legs of lamb and sides of lamb. Yes, the Depression did make a big impact, but not on food. We were the one home that had a lot of food.
Well, so you would have had to learn
but
to
no
use...
money.
No money. Pretty common back then. And you would have had to learn to use every bit of the lamb, I guess, or?
Oh, well, I'm a Scot, and
it doesn't hurt.
And in Scotland, we use every part of the animal. We love the cheap parts, and we love we didn't ever get the very choice cuts because they went down to London and got big prices. But the cattle had been so well fed on lovely Highland heather and stuff. The other food, mince and tatties, which
yes.
is mince and potatoes, was just, about everybody's favourite meal because the quality of the meat was so good.
Well, I think shepherd's pie is still one of my favourites.
It is. It's a very, very good... A lot of the lovely food we used to cook, it does take time. When people say, oh, I'm too busy to do this, no one was ever busier than my mother with 6 children, and no one was ever busier than me with 1 child. But
don't feel bad about it, Suzanne, but God, let's get into that.
But I had books to write and things to do.
Yeah.
And parties to go to.
And you do want to get your children to eat what you eat. Suzanne's not so fond memory was when I cooked a cauliflower with little bugs in it. And she said, Mum, these bugs are getting... I can't eat this, there's bugs. I said, that's all right. They've only eaten the cauliflower. And
It's a bit of protein.
yes,
I got the same thing from my mum with the grubs on the lettuce.
that's right. So I think we're getting far too precious about foods and not careful enough in some ways. But you know, yes, I came up the school. It didn't seem like the school of hard knocks because it wasn't, because people were always baking some scones or some pikelets or beautiful sponge cakes, but chocolate cakes. Life was a dream. And the fellows that used to come by and see if Mrs. Fulton would like any jobs done, they had a bed on the veranda and Mother would give them soup. Wastage never occurred to us because the chooks got
Scraps.
some of the things, they always got fed, and life just went on. Can I tell a story?
I so want you to.
Now I am telling this to every woman, every person in this hall. In Africa they've got a saying, if you think you're too small to make a difference, just spend a night in a dark room with a mosquito. And you know that you're never too small to make a difference.
Suzanne, you've actually written an incredible, incredibly themed...
No, not
Oops,
this
the other one.
I've written a book with my other daughter on...
Not showing
called
favourites.
The
Don't
Thrifty-
feel bad, Louise. It's a bit of a family trait,
called
isn't
The
it?
Thrifty Kitchen, and it's just about this. It's just about not wasting. It's about loving food. It's about getting into the kitchen and enjoying it. It's about not just going for lamb cutlets and learning to use other cuts of meat. When I was 13, Mum asked me, what would you like me to cook for your birthday? Turning 13. And I said, Mum, I love the way you do the French brains in black butter sauce.
What? Wow.
So that was me at 13. And, brains were terribly common then. And now, people think, but they're fabulous. But it's reminding people that all these other cuts are just as delicious, if not more delicious, than a lamb fillet or a lamb cutlet. So my message is get cooking and in loving it. As you say, all these other communities, all our ethnic communities.
Not to knock the Scots, they certainly own it. They take the
teach
badge.
us, the Chinese, the Italians, the Greeks, and more, Ukrainians and Poles that have come to live in this country have enriched our lives so much, almost as much as Margaret has in the way we eat. And learning, as I say, I never felt that Mum didn't have a lot of money when I was young. I didn't know that we didn't have much money. I just became aware of it later because we always ate so well. But wasting was never a part of it. I see fridges today that I've got a very, very dear friend who's from the Ukraine, and she had a terrible time when her family came out here as war refugees, and she was a little girl. They struggled enormously. She said she used to watch Australian kids have fish and chips and they couldn't afford it. But her mother was cooking other things. However, because of that lack of money, it's made her now crazy to buy things. So when I go and visit her, I have to empty the fridge so I can put the milk back because there's so much stuff in it. It's sickening. And I empty it out and what can I do with it? And, I gave her husband a very special treat for a Christmas present. I cleaned their fridge. And he was terribly excited. But a few weeks later, she was very upset because she said, look, next time you come, please write down everything you throw out. She said, because I couldn't find my capers. And I said, well, I wouldn't normally throw out capers because they, even if they're past their use-by date, I wouldn't throw them out because they, you know, that's just something the
keep forever.
Yeah, they keep forever. And so I just kept quiet for a bit. And when she went to the bedroom, I looked in the fridge to check whether I really had thrown out the capers. I found 2 jars deep in the fridge, and I found 2 brand new jars on the door. So I said, how many jars did you buy? 2, because you didn't have any. So now you've got 4 jars of capers in the fridge.
But Suzanne, what can you, I mean, that's a real issue. If your friend is buying and wasting a lot of food.
Because she had nothing. Her idea of making life better is having plenty. But the problem is she's throwing most of it out. It's terrible. And we do, you know, the shopping is so important. I think, you know, when I wrote Thrifty and became aware of how people throw out food, you know, how many of you would on a regular basis throw out the little bunch of herbs that you bought from the supermarket, the coriander or the dill or the something, because you haven't used it up? So, you know, you've got to, when you shop, think, when am I going to use this? That's the most important thing. Am I going to use it today or tomorrow? If not, if you think, well, actually, no, I'm going out tomorrow night, so I can't. No, do not buy it, no matter how seductive it looks.
It's that big thing of, you know, the weekly shop that our parents got into the habit of back, you know, when I was growing up. Certainly it was Friday afternoon was the big day at the supermarket. And that's fine if, like my mum and dad, you have 12 children to feed and you probably should be going to the supermarket every other day. But for me, oh yes.
They were busy.
Busy and productive, yes. But, you know, there's now we just don't need to be going out into that, you know, doing that big shop all the time. I love this idea of just thinking about what you need and what you're going to cook and only buying for that. Louise, one of the other big issues we have with difficulties in food issues is fussy kids, and you've actually written a book on how to help us get around that issue of kids being. Has anyone got a kid who's a fussy eater? Yeah, right. Oh, the same people with the Margaret Fulton cookbook.
I've written a cookbook called Cooking for Your Baby and Toddler. We've actually got a copy here today. But I'm sure there's lots of mums out there today who cook 2 meals every night. It's one question I get asked all the time. How can I stop cooking 2 meals every night because my child won't eat what we eat? And it is a big problem, it's a big time waster, but it's definitely a big food waster. And it's really easy to avoid doing it by teaching your child to eat what you eat, from the word go. I noticed a couple of women here today are pregnant. Pregnancy is a fabulous time to teach your child to like the foods you eat. We now know that children's taste preferences, I actually have a research interest in taste preferences and I covered a lot in my book. We now know that children's taste preferences start developing in the womb. A study was done that showed that women who eat lots of carrots, their children are more likely to eat carrots when they start solid foods. Once you're breastfeeding, it's another opportunity to teach your child about flavour learning. And in that first year, it's a really critical learning period for teaching your children, for developing their taste buds, so that by the time they hit that typical fussy eating age at around 2 or 3 years, they're far more likely to want to eat the foods you eat. And we can nurture our children in the way that my beautiful mum and grandma nurtured me, to teach them to have a sophisticated palate. By doing that, we don't have to cook 2 meals every night. The other great thing we can do to encourage children to minimise food waste is to get them in the garden. By getting children into the garden, you're teaching them. There is a lot of research now that shows that children who get involved in gardening are more likely to eat a greater volume of vegetables and a greater variety of food.
And they won't be so fussy about how the food looks either. You know, they won't be after the perfect banana. I know we've got our little cherry tomatoes and basil out front. every one of those cherry tomatoes gets a little place in my heart, and I wonder how oddly shaped it might be. And they all get eaten because it's something we've made. It's a really...
they connect.
You feel
with the
proud
food.
of it. Yeah.
And instead of having to buy that bunch of coriander and that bunch of parsley, you can just pick what you need. So there's far less waste involved. We have a little girl next door to us who wouldn't eat anything green, and then my lovely father made her own herb garden, and now she's picking the herbs and loving them. If you know how to cook, you can always make a meal from what's in the pantry. Mum and Grandma always taught me, no matter what's in the house, you can make puttanesca pasta, which is so simple. It's just tomatoes and garlic and capers and olives, and it's a fabulous meal. And Mum will tell you, I won't be cheeky enough, I'll let Mum tell you the history of that dish.
Well, no, you're talking about the name puttanesca.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's named after the prostitutes in Rome. It's something that they could cook just between jobs. Very quickly.
A quick meal that doesn't give you bad breath.
And
no
you always
doubt.
have the food on hand.
Yeah.
But it's so true. If you know how to cook, you can do that lovely skill of just seeing what's in the fridge, seeing what's in the cupboard, and turning it into a meal instead of thinking, I've got to go up the road and buy something.
Well, there's an art to that. Mum could always find something to cook, and you found something to cook, and it's because you've shopped right in the first place. You've got something in the pantry, even if it's not fresh, that you know you can cook. For instance, canned dried beans, or canned lentils, pasta, olive oil, some olives or...
And you can't go past eggs. I
And
mean,
eggs.
throw eggs with anything. A few onions
It's
and
so
eggs.
nutritious.
I'm giving cooking tips to the Fultons. I hope everyone's paying attention. Margaret, do you have time for one last story? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, anything? No, I just want to say, do you feel what I've said about mosquitoes? You're never too small to make a difference. You're never too humble. You're never too anything to make a difference if you want to make a difference.